All right. So, thank you so much for that. That was really beautiful. It's so important to center ourselves in our heart. This is our heart work. We are here for something greater than ourselves. I mean, I think that's my experience, and I think many people who end up working in this field. Sometimes I liken it to the calling a priest might get from God to join the ministry. There's that feeling of, okay, I have to, or I get to be in service of this wonderful, magical, powerful, ineffable thing of psychedelic healing. Thank you so much for that. To begin our day, I would love to invite up our moderator, Conour. Kat is a co-founder of North Star and chairs the Sage Institute and is a licensed therapist. And joining her on the panel, we have author Jamie Wheal, and we have Leah Mix from Enthea Health. So please join us up on stage.
Give everyone a moment to sit down. Welcome. So many options. Thank you, Leah. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Hanifa, Liana, Kevin, the team at North Star and Horizons, and everyone for being here. My heart is pounding. I'll be speaking first as we ask the question, is it possible to have a values-driven psychedelic ecosystem? And Leah and Jamie and myself will each speak for about 10 minutes, and we'll go from there. About 2 years ago, as Liana suggested, a group of us were gathering in private. Many groups were gathering in private, having conversations around what is it going to look like when capital and capitalism intersect with the regulation of psychedelic medicines. Many of us were hopeful, inspired, and also afraid. Dave McGahey, the author of the story We Will Call It Paula, which if you haven't read, please pick it up, take a look, was inspired by this, the hope and the fear, painting a picture of a dystopian future of what it could look like, what it has in fact looked like at the intersection of different movements such as yoga, indigenous wisdom, meditation and mindfulness, the natural foods movement. We've seen it, and there's a lot of good that can come out of it, accessibility being one of those core tenets, but also what is the cost? What is lost, and whose voices are not present in the decisions that are made in terms of how those things are delivered. And with that story, we thought we might be preaching to a small choir when we published that story. In fact, we had people reaching out to us from around the world, from backgrounds that we never thought. Investors, entrepreneurs, capitalists, what have you. Many people from different backgrounds who said, I want it to be different than this. I want something else. I want healing for all. I see a world that's possible, and that is essential that we come together to co-create at a time like this. And this was before coronavirus hit. So just before that, those of us that came together co-founding North Star, we were actually about to host a gathering, not at all that different from this. And then we realized, wait a minute, how we do one thing is how we do everything. And how we were looking at going about the creation of that gathering at that time would have actually reflected and engendered a lot of the very dynamics of powers that be and business as usual, that no matter how pure our intent might be, we also know the road to hell was paved with good intentions, right? And so we slowed down And instead, we started hosting stakeholder dinners with different groups committed to generating equitable access to psychedelic medicines for all. And we spoke with elders and wisdom keepers who came together and shared with us their hopes and their fears. And we spoke with investors and entrepreneurs and philanthropists and clinicians and underground practitioners, and we had many more that we wanted to speak to as well. And then a little thing called coronavirus hit, and we went into shelter in place and shifted our focus to generating one of what we hoped would be many assets at North Star, and that was the ethics pledge, which now some of us looking back imagine maybe we should have called it the intentions pledge, not least of which is because the moment you start throwing around the word ethics, there's all kinds of very important questions that come up, like who gets to decide? If we had this figured out already, that would be lovely, but we know that this has been debated from time immemorial. So holding it now as an intentions pledge, we spoke and collaborated with over 100 stakeholders in the field coming from various backgrounds. And the pledge that we produced, which I welcome you to look up on the northstar.guide website, those 7 principles were co-created, generated from this input. And quite frankly, if I had done it myself, it would have been a bit different. If any one of us as co-founders or participants would have, it would have been a bit different. But I'll take a moment now and read these 7 principles to you. And to the extent that they inspire you, I invite you to take them in, to spend time with them. As I can say for myself, even as my work has taken me on and into other domains and working with organizations who are committed and interested in what it looks like to apply these principles, like the Psychedelic Bar Association. You can look up here, actually, and you can check them out for yourself, save me from reading them. That each one of these, should you be interested, one could spend time each day, every day, I believe, for the rest of your life, exploring what does it mean to do this. It's been a rich process for myself, and I know it's been a rich process for other folks that I work with and organizations in this field and beyond who have said, wow, there's value here. And so from this place, when we published this, we invited folks to sign on as individuals to this pledge. We had hundreds of people who have signed on and who actually shared statements, some of which you can see on our website or on other social media handles, to hear some of the powerful words and sentiments that people shared. And there's also very legitimate criticism or concern around, great, what? You take the pledge, you say a nice, pretty little statement, and then what? As we call it, it's like the greenwashing of the psychedelic field, as co-founder Dave McGahey would say, it's the tie-dyeing, right? That we helped tie-dye the field, allowing folks to say, I took the pledge. Well, where's the teeth? Where is the teeth? And quite frankly, that is a question that we are not the first to sit with. It's not the first time in this field. It's not the first time beyond this field. And it's a question that we get to grapple with collectively together as we move into this next chapter, and that I know North Star is wholeheartedly grappling with and invites your participation. But some of the teeth, I hope you'll get to see what the teeth looks like by the actions engendered by some of the participants who will be speaking here today, and also includes culture. Culture matters. And as an organizational consultant, a very common turn of phrase is, culture eats strategy for breakfast. You can have the most incredible strategy, and if you don't have a culture that matches it and supports it, it really doesn't matter all that much. And I say that not to minimize all that will be shared here this afternoon, because we have brilliant minds and incredible strategies that folks will be presenting here today. And my hope is that you will be inspired here to join in a culture that supports the embodiment of these strategies, that they can work together in concert, and that we also take a moment to look around at who's here, to really appreciate the honor and the privilege that it is to be here, and to think of all those who are not here, all those who will be touched by the work that we do, and to invite them into our hearts and into our thinking and approaching of the way we engage ourselves in this field. Thank you. And now it is my honor to introduce Jamie Wheal, who is the founder and executive director of Flow Genome Project and also author of the incredible book, Stealing Fire.
All right. Good morning, everybody. So I'd love to conduct a collective time-bending experiment here, which is we've got 12 minutes or so to get the most shared together. So if we can all just commit for 12 minutes to sit on our phones, put them away, turn them off, and give me as much love, focus, and attention as I can, and then I will speak into this space, hopefully, the things that will serve. And then I'll share the deck with you afterwards so the details can be unpacked. So we're going to kind of condensify logos. So the first is just, why are we all here? This is just, to me, one of the simplest mission statements that, Buckminster Fuller articulated over half a century ago, which is, how do we do this thing? And how do we do this thing in a world that is potentially running off the rails and out of time? And half my work is in helping humans develop from age, sort of cradle to cosmos, some sort of from toddlers in Montessori all the way to leaders, all the way to conscious death and dying. But the other half is sort of neuroanthropology. So these couple of books, Stealing Fire came out in 2017. It was sort of tracking this community and this movement, transformational culture. And the one that just came out this year, Recapture the Rapture, is trying to sort of speak into this moment, and especially around all of the goals and intentions of this collective community. How do we help humans at scale, under worsening conditions, wake up, grow up, and show up? But now I'm a bad neuroanthropologist in the sense that I'm also a participant observer, right? I didn't stay abstracted from my community. And when people ask sort of what oriented my own personal perspective on this stuff, it was music, mountains, and mushrooms. Came up in the Colorado Rocky Mountain, tribe, action sports, psychedelics, and Grateful Dead music with Newgrass, Telluride Bluegrass Festival, that world. No gurus, no middlemen, it was straight to source, life and death, and celebrate with your brothers and sisters. That extended desert tribe, Burning Man community, many of the same things. But my point in sharing that is simply that I deeply care, and what I'm about to say is coming from love. So, I love a good story. I hope you guys do too. Pixar has famously created a template for all of their movies, right? And they basically say, hey, once upon a time, ... initial state, and then something changes, and then increasing plot tension, and then increasing plot tension, until finally, resolution and happily ever after. So I wanted to kind of give you guys the answer first, right? Once upon a time, a psychedelic renaissance gave everyone hope that we could heal ourselves, remember our deepest purpose, and get ourselves out of this mess we've made. But then, we started to look around and began to realize that all was not as it seems. The rules of business and finance were making it harder and harder for even good people to do the right thing. And then, shady people and greedy bandits crashed the magic party, seeking to profit for themselves instead of helping everyone else. And then, the good people started to get confused and concerned that the revolution was going to be held up for ransom. And all of their hopes for healing and change sold out. Until one day, the community came all the way to its senses and stood up to protect the integrity of these experiences, as old as time and sacred to all. So 3 points. The first is, do not ask for whom the ratchet cranks. It cranks for us. 1970, New York Times op-ed, Milton Friedman wrote a funny little piece about the fact that fiduciary responsibility was actually the sole and only moral obligation of a corporation. 5 years later, it gets a proof in case, Revlon, right? The Revlon Flex Shampoo Company. You guys remember all those big-haired Farrah Fawcett commercials from back in the day? Maybe you don't. I'm aging myself, right? The Revlon case in 1975 asserted as case law and precedent that fiduciary responsibility was it. And American business has forever since been shaped by that. Now, what's the point of that? The point is that this is the water we have been swimming in for decades and generations, but there was a point in time where it was not so. And legal precedents can change. But it's critical to realize that that had impact. Now, if anybody knows or has heard of John Mackey, he's an Austin institution where I live, and if you know him personally, you know him to be a prickly son of a bitch, and iconoclastic as hell. Principled to a fault, whether or not you agree with his particular principles. But my point being here is that they grew Whole Foods from nothing, had venture capitalists backing them as they did their initial expansions, felt trapped by those venture capitalists, and to leave them went public. They then went into the public market to further fuel their growth. They became the largest organic market makers on the planet. They supported sustainable agriculture. They did all sorts of good things, even as they went to Lexus hybrids and $15 goat cheese, right? And became anything but the sort of carob and granola bulk bin thing that they originated as, right? But then Jana Funds, over there on the left, was an 8% activist investor. They had done such a good job shaping the organic market that, wouldn't you know it, Walmart and everybody else and their mother, Trader Joe's, Costco, had all been piling into this space. And now, think back to the Revlon case study, there was now fiduciary responsibility to eliminate inefficiencies. And this was a frying pan in the fire situation where, to escape Jana, they had to leap once more into the arms of Jeff Bezos and the Amazon anaconda, who is now squeezing out all of the inefficiencies, which include every pro-social, every pro-human activity that Whole Foods ever used to do, now up against the yardstick of an increasingly competitive race to the bottom of the margin curve organic market. So this is not to say, these things are inevitable. These are to say these are ratchet plays, and if we don't understand the substrate or the foundations that we're operating on, we will likely end up with not dissimilar results, right? So it's just important to understand some of those. The next one is the obvious thing. In 1923, insulin was discovered, right? And the developers were like, this is needed for humanity. We will sign it over to the University of Toronto for $1. And now it costs $500 to $800 a month. How on earth did that happen? Well, redesigner drugs. They tweaked it. They modified the molecules and they patented them. We've seen this with Epidiolex. We've seen this with esketamine. We're seeing this. There's plenty of shorter-acting psilocybins, specific derivations, specific formulations. They're all getting anything that is off-label or open source or organic is being moved into these spaces. And where this heads is Prozac Nation 2.0 with new improved 5-HT2A receptor sites. Ding, ding, ding. So we should really pay attention to that, and what it's going to look like is this. If anybody tracked this in 2017, there was this really weird news thing. This was when vaping was became the sort of middle school, high school crisis, and everyone was freaked about it. And none other than decrepit turtle Mitch McConnell stumps up with anti-vaping legislation. You're like, Kentucky Senator Mitch McConnell, what gives here? And what gives is he was absolutely in the back pocket of Altria, the big tobacco company who had bought Wheal, and they were floating legislation that was actually designed to, it was complete greenwashing, and it was intended to soothe the public, to give them the perception that somebody ought to do something, but actually to game the system to create favorable advantages for the donor corporations behind the thing. So what we will holy Moses, all right, really? On the whole 12? All right, so what we will likely see is a Citizens for Psychedelic Safety Act coming down the pike sometime soon, and what it will likely have, and everyone scrolling through their news feeds will be like, ah, good, really glad for that. Who will be against that? And what it will likely look like is more like, no street drugs, that would be unsafe, no organically grown elements, and what it will only be is that these two providers, or one providers, are the ones who have the sanctioning to provide for everybody, and it's a backdoor monopolistic play. Right? Point number 2, don't hate the player, hate the game theory. You can have bad things happen. You can have sociopathic effects in a system with no sociopaths in it. And all that has to happen is you have the non-zero chance that somebody's going to eat the last brownie. Someone's going to cut down the last redwood or hunt the last whale. If it's definitely going to be somebody, it might as well be us. Okay? This doesn't go so well. Right? You can end up with sociopathic behaviors in a market system based on the multipolar trap of game theory. So please notice that, because what will happen is well-intentioned psychedelic folks are like, no, 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 we've had lunch. No, 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 we've had dinner. And in fact, tell you what, they even shared with me their own profound experience on psychedelics. I was a dickhead, cokehead hedge fund, bro. And then I went to Peru. And I realized I'm now in service of the medicine, right? And the question is just how true is that? How deep is that? Because we look at this, there are asymmetrical incentives and power dynamics in this system which precludes true consent, especially for the therapists and the academics. Right? These folks are, generally speaking, these are gross generalizations, but generally less resourced and more idealistic. The folks in the top right corner have law, IP, and capital, and they are offering deals and trades that don't necessarily line up, right, with the true cost of the exchange or the transaction. Point number 3, we're all having this psychedelic experience as a user. It's showing up in 3 completely different models. Right? We have the medical model, which is the patient, focusing on physiology, tweaking dosage with a business model, specifically the sort of pharma model of IP, customer lifetime value, right, and enterprise value. We have the therapeutic model, which is a client, right? It's mostly about the psychology of the client. The intervention is, yes, there's a foundational dosage, but it's fundamentally about discussion and conversation. There's co-pays and cash system, and you're dealing with an insurance model or cash for service model in a service business. And then there's the sacramental, and you can see it's a congregant who's now having the experience. It's spirituality is the goal. Ritual is our intervention. Donation is the economic engine, right? And the ministry model is basically saving souls, which is all fine and good, except we're having these overlapping experiences with different stakeholders thinking they're doing the same thing, but they're actually running different things. So in conclusion, trust in Allah, but tie your camel. You need to know the measure of the people, the Gom Jabbar from Dune, right? Are you actually in it? Guilds that keep people honest. Going with the flow ends in the ditch. So actually put things in writing if you want to do it different than bottom naked fiduciary responsibility. Don't think that you've had the conversations. It has to be papered, and you actually have to bend and shift. And Paradise Lost and Found is clarify what's up with the people you're engaging. So the money changers are already in the temple, right? But as a wise rabbi once said, we must in fact render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. But let's never forget to render unto the mystery what has always been the mystery. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jamie. And just highlighting that intersection of idealism and realism. And next we have Leah Mix.
It is really wonderful to see you all here. Congrats, Liana. Congrats to everyone who has helped birth this event and North Star. This is truly something of which the community can be proud. I actually don't think that I have much that I can add to the wisdom that's been offered by Hanifa and Kat and Jamie. Really, thank you guys so much. The answer to the question, can we have a values-based psychedelic ecosystem, seems self-evident. In this moment, there are so many of us here creating this reality together. We have come here to answer this question. And in doing so, the question is answered. I'm really glad to see you guys here. At a fundamental level, I believe the privilege and opportunity of this work and participation in this community is to be liberated from unconscious fears and the perpetual cycle of fear-based reality making, and to have more fun. Our wise elders and mentors show us the path. If our consciousness and community practices bring us into greater humility, that is, greater appreciation, and I do mean appreciation, for what we do not know and what we cannot know, then our relationship with the unknown may change altogether. We may find ourselves in a loving embrace with it and no longer in fear. I would like to offer you an image that we may briefly explore together. Picture, if you will, the yin and yang symbol, just in your mind's eye. Let's say this image represents all that is, individual, collective, conscious, unconscious, and so on. Now imagine the two halves, black and white, as two entwined lovers. One side, you can pick one, is you. All that is you. The other side is all that is not you. It is other than you. Now, let's for a moment bring our close attention to the place where the two halves seem to come together. When we look closer, we notice there's a gap, a small liminal space which is not white and is not black. Now imagine what is allowed in this space, what is created there, is only by respectful negotiation between you and that which is not you, you and unknown, self and other. This space of respectful negotiation and co-creation between you and that which is not you is where all the magic happens. It is where something may be brought forward that is greater than ourselves. The energy that we bring to this space, moment to moment, will have the most profound impact on what we create and what is amplified. I invite you now to use your full body wisdom, if you wish, to relax into this loving embrace where there is infinite mutual respect and compassion and no fear. May we come to experience in our relationship with the unknown how tremendously supported we are. May we be in awe at the privilege and opportunity to bring forward into reality something unique and beautiful in service to our purpose and to the collective. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leah and Jamie and everyone for being here. And as we transition now, I invite us all to be in this question together. Is it possible to have a values-aligned psychedelic ecosystem? Let's be in conversation together. Thank you.
So we're going to have ample time at the end of most sessions for Q&A. I think right now, Kat, if you don't mind staying up, I think we might have time for one or two questions, if anybody has one. There is a microphone in the center of the room, and we have a taker, do we? Okay, no, he faked me out. Okay, great. Well, if there's no questions, then I just would like to thank you all so much for sharing yourselves and showing up in such a beautiful way today. You've given us a lot to think about this morning, so thank you.